Power cannot see that. 20 years later, Clew awoke to a well-rested body on the morning that began the end of his current ministry. He rose from bed and walked with bleary eyes to wash his body. Warm water encompassed his arms, his legs, his chest. Eucalyptus fragrance rose from the murky surface. When finished, he dried himself with warmed towels and dressed in rough woven cotton robes to achieve that perfect paradox of comfort and restraint. He resided in a modest home within the house of one. He had 3 rooms to himself: a bedroom, a loo, and a living room. Here, he was Clew. Beyond, he was Elder. Clew lit incense that he dropped into a brazier, and then he sat on a woven mat at the center of his living room floor. He closed his eyes, musty air pressing in on him. This hour at the beginning of his day was his only form of privacy. Over 1 million people now lived on Rodinia. Clew's congregation encompassed the world, from the mines to the refineries, all the way to manufacturing and assembly. This planet had but one purpose, and Clew was the oil that made its gears turn. Many of his duties were ceremonial by now, though the occasional issue warranted his direct input. The Anointed Ones handled many of the specific problems that cropped up across the world. A recent tour of the sectors had strengthened the people. Attendance was up. The people were content, if not entirely happy. The doctrine of transition helped them understand that this state was temporary. It helped them. It had to help. A chime sounded throughout his home. The day was beginning, and he had a meeting with the Anointed Ones in 10 minutes. Clew rose from his mat and exited his quarters into the house of one. It was a gargantuan building, far larger than was necessary, yet still smaller and shorter than the citadel. Golden carpet lined gilded walls. White light permeated the air from chandeliers, floating ceilings, and breakaways in the walls. All was perfect, and had been perfect for quite a long time. Travis provided the means for a grandiose display, so long as Clew provided him with a worldwide ministry in return. Funding rose with performance, and so Clew garnered near perfection from his transients. Of course, that was decided in the early days. Back then, Travis had been more engaged. He even wanted more specific lore behind the doctrine. Clew had always understood that with a perfect balance of information and mystery, a believer's doubts and skepticism cancel out like opposites. That's where lies the faith, he told Travis. Travis needed many years to recognize the brilliance of Clew's ministry. Eventually, he backed off and let Clew manage all spiritual affairs. Still, something was missing, though Clew struggled to identify what. Clew descended a wide set of stairs into the garden room. A trickling waterfall lined one wall of rough white stone. A koi pond rested at the wall's base, ripples lapping up against a grassy floor. On this world so devoid of life, Clew had long ago decided that the most spiritual encounter a person could have was with the natural aspects of their original world. Only in religious buildings and rooms could such natural elements be found on Rodinia. Clew removed his shoes and dipped his feet in the water, one after the other. Cleansed, he stepped across the koi pond along a narrow bridge through the only opening in the waterfall. Beyond was a private room with 8 seats on the ground. The inner sanctum was ground only for the feet of the Anointed Ones, and Clew's Anointed Ones had already arrived. Clew sat in the remaining seat, forming a circle with the others. His anxiety towards these meetings had long passed, the fear that someone might see through the act and call him a liar. But it hadn't happened during his Avalonian ministry, and it hadn't happened in this current one. "Are you well, Elder?" Iris, the first Anointed One, asked. "Very. Thank you," Clew said in tranquility. The decision to recruit his Anointed Ones from the ship that brought Clew to this planet had caused contention with Travis. But when the crew had threatened to quit, Travis admitted that their participation was unavoidable. Clew cleared his throat. "What news do you have of your congregations?" All is well among my congregation, Iris said, matching Clew's tranquility. She had her usual perfect posture and spoke as if she were born to the position of anointed one. Conditions have been steady since we last spoke. That is well to hear, Clew said, nodding his head in her direction. Lee spoke next, never to be outdone by Iris. Sector 2 has experienced an increase in activity since your visit, Elder. Meditation services are being attended, and our positivity ratings have increased by 2%. Continue to send my love and encouragement, Clew said. Dana cleared her throat, shifting before she spoke. I've encountered small hiccups in my congregations on the topic of the intermediary life. Some have experienced confusion about exactly how many intermediary lives they may experience before arriving at the hereafter. I see. Clew bit his lip. These doctrinal issues cropped up every now and again. They were usually a simple fix, but still needed to be addressed before turning into real issues. The hereafter is a state that we achieve together. That is why unity becomes ever more important as we approach that state. It does not matter how many times the individual switches out, if we have not achieved enlightenment together. I will speak on this. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. Dana bowed her head, indicating she had finished speaking. 3 other anointed ones reported on their congregations and sectors before it became Gareth's turn to address them. I am afraid that Sector 7 has fallen in these past weeks, Gareth said in a shaky voice that barely escaped a stutter. Even further? Clew asked. What has happened? Gareth swallowed, eyes cast downward. Silence seemed to compress the room around his next words. Some of the children have set aside their initiatives. They are refusing to work. Clew leaned back. Another reoccurring problem. This was best solved by diverting the issue. Setting aside their initiative, that gives purpose to their lives. Without their work, how will they prepare for the hereafter? My thoughts exactly, Elder, Iris said. Clew ignored her. She was always looking for ways to score cheap points in her favor. She was invaluable for it, but sometimes overbearing. Clew spoke. Gareth, how will the people in your sector progress independently of their initiatives? My apologies, Elder and Anointed Ones. Gareth allowed panic to enter his face. His fears for the meeting were being realized. The transients in my sector are saying that the intermediary life is a lie. They seem to believe they are slaves. Iris gave an indignant snort. Why does this preposterous nonsense always come from Sector 7? Keep your transients away from mine, lest they infect us all with their destabilizing ideas. No, Clew said, growing short. She had always been too quick to derision towards Gareth. Still, this failure could not go unpunished. We cannot allow these false beliefs to fester. We must perform a re-assimilation. I will disperse those affected into neighboring sectors and surround them by our strongest children. Replace them with others up to the task of rehabilitating a depressed sector. Relief transformed Gareth's face. Thank you, Elder. I will not allow this to happen again. See that you don't, or a new initiative may lie in your future. One better suited to your qualifications, Clew said. Perhaps he was in a cruel mood, but he needed them to be better. I will not disappoint you, Gareth insisted with a vigorous head nod. Clew ignored him. Any other items to discuss before the House of One? Silence passed between Clew and the Anointed Ones. No? Clew asked. Let us dismiss, then. Clew rushed from the room, leaving his confused Anointed Ones behind. He passed through the garden room, trying to figure out why he was angry. Angry enough to lash out at Gareth in that way. His duties had become a chore. Years of success had tainted the dream he built, and minor hiccups became roadblocks worthy of rage. He slipped his shoes back on and began up the stairs back to his quarters. He needed time on his own today. Clew? Clew paused at the voice, but also the use of his name. He almost turned in a rage, but no. He took a breath, plastering on a smile and actually feeling marginally better. Jolene. She approached on legs lengthened by high heels. Usually such frivolities weren't allowed on Rodinia, but this was Jolene. Upper levels of the House of One were also off limits to most transients, but rules did not apply to Jolene. Clew, Jolene said, matching Clew's curtness in a mocking way. Clew took a breath and smiled. Many days have passed since you graced these halls. Jolene offered an obligatory head nod. 3 years, honey, but don't pretend like you haven't savored my absence. Clew compressed his eyebrows in disapproval. You disservice yourself with such talk. Jolene yawned and stretched right there in the House of One, dressed in casual clothes from the prior life. So formal, like you believe the roles we're playing in this ridiculous theater. And why do you sound British after all these years? I am British, and I've always had an accent. Clew lowered his gaze, glancing about. Besides, I've noticed the accent makes those of American origin trust me more easily. Jolene looked Clew up and down. Yeah, I'll say. Also, strangely attractive. Too bad you're celibate. You are the one with an accent, from my perspective, Clew said, growing icy. She had this way of getting under his skin. Have you any idea how ridiculous you sound? Ooh, hoo, hoo. Jolene's reaction echoed through the House of One. Feisty Clew. She screwed up her face in imitation of Clew. Good sir, I do believe I struck a nerve. Why are you here, Jolene? Clew asked, losing patience. Surely you have more in mind than to pester me. Surely I do, Jolene said, still in mockery of his accent. Stop taking a piss on me. Why? Jolene's voice transformed into a new accent. You more into southern gals? Jolene. All right, Jolene said. You just make it so damn easy. It's so satisfying to see you lose that calm, crusty exterior. So, anyway, bad news. You're needed in Sector 7, and it's an emergency. Clew sighed, skeptical of just how dire the situation was. What kind of emergency? He was not prepared to handle another false alarm this morning. Jolene tipped her head back and forth, seeming to know that Clew was not taking the issue seriously. It's a looping case. Clew straightened his back at that. Looping? He looked around, wondering if they should discuss this somewhere more private. Looping was a rare condition that, unfortunately, was a risk for every transient. It happened when a person got revived twice, and the consciousness stretched between the two bodies. We haven't had one of those in years. How did this happen? Yeah, I know, Jolene said with frustration. I spoke to the revival labs and they don't know. They've been careful to bring people here with minimal chances of having their families revive them. For good measure, they either faked DNRs or deleted the genome altogether. Somehow she slipped through. Clew closed his eyes. Today was supposed to be just a normal day. That's what I thought. Have we been able to tell where she's looping from? I know that can be hard to pinpoint. This time it was easy, Jolene said. Her son is a reviver on Earth. Clew took a breath. A measured response in all things was best. Still, something this big happening without Murphy's knowledge was unacceptable. How could they miss that? Sounds like we never should have revived this person. Yeah, I know, Jolene said, letting her guard down a bit in sympathy. But it's done, and now we have to fix it. Who is it? Clew said. His anger eased with Jolene taking his side. Oh, you don't know 215848H3? Jolene asked. The smile escaped Clew unbidden. How did she do that? Turn a crisis into something manageable. Clew gave her a suffering look. We go by names in my ministry. Jolene displayed exaggerated understanding by rolling her head with an open mouth. In that case, she goes by Luna Hawthorne. I see, Clew said, but then the name triggered recognition in his memory. Wait, I know that name. She's had issues before. Jolene appeared surprised, but happy to see Clew knew the woman. Are you sure? Clew grimaced. It was not a particularly flattering story. Yeah, a few years after Murphy revived her, we received a notice that the family was looking for her. So we had to record a video message and everything to get them to stop. Jolene puffed out her lip. You'd think they'd get a clue. Clew rolled his eyes. Get serious. Jolene snapped her posture into a vertical line and looked at Clew with a militant level of discipline. Let's go then. We got livestock to save. I mean people. Totally meant people. Clew let out an involuntary laugh. Jolene was annoying and disrespectful to the institutions that provided for her. Yet, somehow, she lightened the world. Yes, so obvious. Lead the way. Sector 7 has needed a visit for some time anyway. Jolene frilled her hand and gave a deep, mocking bow. After you, Holiness. Under normal circumstances, Clew was always happy to leave the House of One. When he wasn't touring the sectors and strengthening the transients, he didn't often have the time for travel. Today would have been a welcome reprieve if not for the severity of the current problem. A transient was looping, and in a far-off sector at that. Clew departed with Jolene, emerging from the House of One into an underground terminal. Trains connected every building of any import on Rodinia. The only other option for transport was an all-terrain vehicle. The manufacturing front had a separate transport system, and most of the transients had little reason for travel to begin with. Clew and Jolene boarded the train, and soon they were off to Sector 7. The Rodinian landscape slid past the windows. The House of One stood majestic and white against the black Rodinian stone and yellow atmosphere. Blue shafts of lightning added to the brilliance of the moment. The citadel towered into the atmosphere beside the House of One. It seemed to tower upwards forever because, in a way, it did. The transition into the space elevator was almost imperceptible. Exports climbed up the elevator to space. The Dyson Sphere satellites hovered over the planet in thousands. They were headed for Rodinia L1, where they would spend 1 month in diagnostics before heading off to the sun. Soon, the site was obscured by a blocky metal refinery, and Clew turned in his seat to wait out the trip in peace. Jolene, never to let a quiet moment go unspoken, spoke. I might have thought a bigwig like yourself would use private transportation. Clew considered ignoring her. They might be together for a few days, and maintaining social boundaries might do them both well. I gave up the luxury of privacy long ago. An hour later, the train rolled to a stop in Sector 7. Clew had been here on multiple occasions for tours and other religious duties. The main terminal here was outfitted as a hub for people traveling from their residence to their initiatives. By mid-morning, the station was all but empty. Clew appreciated the chance to slip through the terminal unnoticed. All primary services in the sector were within a 5-minute walk. Luna Hawthorne had been hospitalized to treat the symptoms of her looping. Clew had been there once, several years back, when the facility was built. Jolene opened the door for Clew to enter the hospital, and he stepped inside.